Good morning. Let's go ahead and get started with grand rounds this morning. It's our pleasure to have Dr. Luke Newton from the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology. Dr. Newton spent the first 14 years of his life in Mexico, went to medical school at UT Southwestern, and then did his residency in obstetrics and gynecology at Chapel Hill, and then came to San Antonio, has been on the faculty. He has a particular interest in social media and professionalism that was generated through their national organization for, I guess, to solve some problems. And so he's here today to tell us about it. Dr. Newton.
Thank you for having me. Our goal for today is to try to, like was said, the interest came because I got so frustrated with people complaining about what the kids these days are doing on social media in medicine, and tried to figure out what is the best way to address the solution. So a colleague of mine in Dallas and I presented a proposal to our national organization and asked for them to allow us to do some things. And this is sort of a product of some of that. And so let's look at this together. Here's a post that was sent to me 2 years ago. What do we think about this? Read through it. Who here thinks that this is okay to post on Facebook? Okay. Who here thinks it's completely wrong to post on Facebook? Who here is not sure?
What is Facebook?
Perfect. So, I think that's a very legitimate question, pointing out some of the generational shifts that we're going to find today. And I think that's part of the challenge today, is to understand that some of the principles we'll talk about today have nothing to do with Facebook. They have everything to do with professionalism, because the type of social media that we're on will change. Eventually, Facebook will become like MySpace. I'll explain what MySpace is later. And there will be a new way for us to express ourselves and a new way to interact, and the principle must remain the same. We have to be professional. How about this one? Same person. They post this one. Tell me what you think about this. Read through it. It's a little long. So it's a little different. There's no cuss words in it, first of all. It's more of a sort of kind story. Who here thinks it's unprofessional for this person to have posted this on Facebook? Okay. Who here is completely okay with this post on Facebook? Who here is not sure? And that's about typical for what I see for this audience. And you know, in the end, it's kind of a sweet story. What's the problem with it for the people who had objections to it?
It goes against basic Hippocratic oath. You shouldn't be talking about your patients just off the cuff.
I agree. Let's get to that by going here. Read this one for me. It's long. It's kind of a thoughtful sort of post, kind of introspective on something. Who here has a problem with this post on Facebook? Who thinks it's inappropriate for this post to have been put on Facebook? Okay? Why? So why is it unprofessional?
It's specific enough that some patient identifier information is in there.
Yeah.
I think if you make it more generic, I don't think posting about your work necessarily, if it's extremely generic, is a problem, but I think this one is specific enough that it...
So this comes back to the comment before. That actually, the first two were true Facebook posts. That last one was not. I typed it into my own Facebook page. I took a screenshot and then I deleted it. Where it actually came from is this book right here. It's a paragraph straight from a book that the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation gives medical students on their first day of medical school, or at least did 10, 12 years ago. And so what I did was I took a paragraph out of that and I typed it into my Facebook page to see what you guys thought. So why is it okay for that last post to be right here, but people aren't exactly sure if it's okay right here? What's the difference? Access, what do you mean?
Facebook pretty much can be like your profile. If you don't have enough settings, anyone can access to what you write. I mean, your friends, in reality, any person. But on doctoring, how many people outside the medical field are really going to have access to that magazine or that journal? I think quite limited. So I think it really depends on the context that you have those expressions. As I was mentioning.
You touched on a couple of good things. One is the audience, right? Who, anyone can get this. This is sitting on the desk, on my desk at my house. My wife's never read it. She has no interest in reading it. Who's supposed to read this? Doctors who are interested in becoming better physicians somehow. That's something that's important to them to listen to some essays. What else is different?
I mean,
What do you mean?
so if you have that issue in your office today, go home and post it tonight on Facebook. It's pretty clear who you are talking about for anybody who knows anything about the situation. Whereas if you write an essay that comes out in print 10 years later, it kind of gets lost in the series of patients you've seen over that decade.
And that goes back to the sort of the second post that we showed about the person in respiratory failure, that we felt a little uncomfortable, even though it was kind of a sweet story, we felt uncomfortable because it was something that presumably was just happening. And there was some diagnosis there, you could pick up the timestamp, there was something that seemed very close to the situation, whereas this one, 10 years has gone by. What else?
I think the context, so the book is intended, as you said, for physicians, and this is in sort of an open forum. And I think what happens when you put some of that in open forum, it potentially could undermine doctor-patient relationship, doctor-patient trust. Mm-hmm. Whereas in this context, for students and others, it kind of reinforces some of the issues that we have in dealing with patients. So the contexts are entirely different.
I agree.
I was just going to say that but if you did that on Facebook with a group of your colleagues, it's only physicians that would have access to reading that may not have as much of a problem. I guess the question is who's accessing it. So if you can limit that access to the audience that you're trying to capture only, then that'd be fine. And I think you can limit like who can share what and that kind of thing.
There are ways to set privacy settings such that only certain people can see it. There's dangers to that, and we can talk about those in a little while. What else is different? There's a whole lot of different things. Just a few more thoughts. Who's your editor in the middle of the night on Facebook? You and your 3 beers, right? You and whatever is interesting to you at that moment. Presumably, this had an editorial board or an editor which sat and thought, maybe this wasn't quite the way we should phrase that. And so some of it had to do with that. So I think that there's a lot of differences between, but you can take the exact same material, put it into a different setting, and it becomes unprofessional. There's lots of things that have come out in the last couple of years that looks at challenges for physicians in their need to express themselves. So this physician was sued because they felt the need to add some markings on this person's face, but on top of it, they chose to take some pictures of it, and then they chose to post it on their Facebook page. This here happened where she was a grad student who was actually a friend of the physician. She ended up in the ER drunk. And so this person took pictures of them and posted them, but it was clear it was coming from someone who was a physician and had seen her in the hospital. This one was just for pictures placed online to show the example of the good work that this breast surgeon did, and did not have permission of the patients. This one here is probably the most notorious one. This happened to an OBGYN up in St. Louis. And it's interesting, I just gave this talk 2 months ago or 2 weeks ago to the hospital where this happened. And you can't imagine the amount of vetting that I had to go through to figure out how to use this example, because it was kind of the elephant in the room. And so I said, I know why I'm coming. I know why you're having me. And this person basically posted this thing on Facebook. So it said, so I have a patient who's chosen to either no show or show up late, sometimes hours late for her prenatal visits, ultrasounds, NSTs. She's now 3 hours late for her induction. May I show up late for her delivery? So this person got a screenshot of, someone got a screenshot of this, and this person almost got fired for this. And what's interesting about this post is, I don't think right here it's necessarily a HIPAA violation, but then the dialogue starts. And we talked about sort of audience and when people start to participate. Here, this person's saying, cancel the induction, and then right here it says, here's the explanation. Here, for cancel the induction, she's a prior stillbirth. So now, because of the conversation, she ended up probably moving pretty close to a HIPAA violation. So now we have a diagnosis, a little bit more information, and then, as most conversations on Facebook move, here's the explanation for why this patient must be late. It probably has nothing to do with the San Antonio bus system or the fact that it's hard to get around in this town. It's that she must be out drinking, right? So then the conversation, she started it out in a fairly questionable, unprofessional way, and then moved it down here, HIPAA violated, moved here, and then that's not her here, but then just sort of the conversation degraded to presuming that all patients who don't show up are drinking. So it's something where, talking to people who know this physician, she's a really good doctor. She's a really responsible person. And in a moment, she was doing something that maybe we have done in a doctor's lounge before, right? Has anyone done something similar to this in a doctor's lounge? Where you've said, I can't believe I've had a patient cancel 3 times in a row. And at that point, you're expressing something. It's frustration. It's just this became way bigger than she ever intended it to be. One thing I think when in a room like this that we struggle with is that what happens is that the people who are sitting in the front and center of the room sit here and say, in the olden days, we were so professional, and the kids these days are so unprofessional. I look at this op note and that I reviewed about 2 years ago to figure out if a patient could VBAC, and I found this, this physician's about 70 years old in Texas, and I found this note that I find professionally challenged. So it's not an issue of the old days were so great and people weren't unprofessional. I hear stories from the scrub techs about how we acted a long time ago. I don't think it was what everything happened, but I do hear stories from them about things that were acceptable, about throwing and yelling in the OR. And I don't think that this current generation is as... I do believe this current generation is more sensitive to those things. So I think in many ways they're more professional. I think this is their challenge. I think it's a different opportunity for us to act unprofessional. So this is not an issue of the olden days were so professional, the new days are so unprofessional. It's a new way to express ourselves and be unprofessional. I want to discuss the emergence and saturation of social media. I want to discuss the potential benefits of social media in medical care. I want to discuss the challenges of social media as it relates to it, and then talk about some guidelines that we can use to police ourselves. Some of the posts we use are offensive. Most of them have been sent to me, and we've either restaged them, and that's what the funds from our national organization gave us money to do, or we've tried to protect their identity. When you look at who's doing Facebook, this is 2 years old, but about half of Americans are on Facebook. It's a little bit more these days. 1 in 9 people in the world are on Facebook. And this one I think we'll find interesting. This says that 46 million Americans check their social media sites several times per day. I think those of us who do rounds can see that the medical students check it several times per rounds. right? So it's something where it's very, very common in the way that they interact. And we've done quite a few surveys on this, and we've found that about 90% of U.S. physicians are active in social media. So about 90% of us are using it. And so who here has a Facebook page? Okay. Who here does not have a Facebook page? Exactly. And then there's the one, what is Facebook? When you look at sort of the prevalence, the question to that is, a survey that's 2 years ago said that 92% of people recognize what Facebook is. 90% of people recognize what Twitter is. Although only about 12% of people have a Twitter account. What's different about people on Twitter?
Limited amount of characters.
There's a limited amount of characters, which gives a whole other challenge to context, right? Because now we move our context down to 140 characters. The thing to understand about people on Twitter is that they're very influential. Even though they represent the minority, anyone who's anyone or thinks they're anyone, like Justin Bieber, has a Twitter account. So I'll tell you who Justin Bieber is later. And so it's something where those people even though they represent a minority, they're a very influential minority who actually do move dialogue in a very important way. This is not an anti-social media talk. This is a very pro-social media talk. I think that at this time, especially in residents and medical students training, it's an opportunity for them to keep up with people, to be reminded when it's their dad's birthday, right? When their entire life stinks and they can't remember just anything, it's nice to be able to be reminded it's your dad's birthday and you should probably send them a message or call them. There's certain things that are very good in able to achieve it. Organizations are using it. UH has a Facebook page. It's used mostly for trying to educate the public about opportunities that they have for improving their health. And so it's used in many, many good ways. So I don't want this to be an anti-Facebook thing to communicate. And if the answer is just that if social media is bad and we should just stay away, I think we have to understand the amount of influence that social media can have. And I think that this is one of the many examples. Whether you agree or don't agree with defunding Planned Parenthood, that's not the point. The point is that when Susan G. Komen Foundation decided not to send funds to Planned Parenthood, within 3 days they reversed their decision because it blew up on Twitter. Because Twitter got so angry that Susan G. Komen felt the pressure to change their mind. So if we aren't involved in the dialogue, people who we don't want to be involved in the dialogue will make decisions for us. And so I do think it's important for physicians to be influential in this world. And so the answer is not just don't ever post, don't have a Twitter account, don't have a Facebook account. There are important things to understand about the positives. When we look at whether medical boards have had to address this study 2 years ago in JAMA looked at the executive directors of all the boards, and 71% of them responded. 92% of them indicated they had some online issue that had to be corrected through their board. It was kind of a mix of a lot of different things, misrepresenting credentials, e-prescribing in a way without establishing, but there was quite a bit of social networking interactions starting to emerge from there. And interestingly, where it came from is 2/3 of it came from patients or their families. So what does that tell us about our online presence? Yeah, and who's checking it? Patients. And if I was a patient, I would too. Because if I was sitting there for 23 and a half hours, just doing nothing in the hospital, and those nice doctors rounded on me for half an hour a day, and I had 23 other hours, why not look them up? I have my phone right there. I can just look them up and learn about those nice people that just came in, and then shockingly find something that I didn't expect to find. When we look at medical students, this survey, I haven't been able to find one that's more recent. It's 2009, and it's a very 2009 study. They surveyed deans of medical schools, and they found that About 60% of them had to discipline a medical student for some act of unprofessionalism on social networking. It was the sort of expected mix, some profanity, discriminatory language, intoxication, sexually suggestive material. There was informal warnings to 2/3 of them, and 7% of them had to dismiss a student. If you did this survey again right now, I guarantee you it would be 100%. Most of them have to deal with this once a month at least. So it's a constant sort of redirection of our medical students to look at things that they're posting. I found this study about application to residency, and UAB Ortho program basically pulled all of their applicants from 2011, and they looked back on their social networking activity, and they first found that 85% of them had no privacy settings. So we had a conversation earlier about privacy settings, making sure that only your mom and your friends can look at your pictures of your dog and all the other things you feel the need to post about. And they found that really only 15% of us chose to put privacy settings that would limit anyone from seeing it. They found 16% of them had unprofessional content posted. The biggest thing I found interesting here is this number here, is that only 46% of them had a Facebook profile. So for those of you sitting over here, what do you think about that number?
False.
What's false about it?
The percentage, they probably inactivated their account during residency.
So what percentage of your classmates in medical school 1 or 2, 3 years ago had a Facebook account? 90. So why could they only find 46% of them? Is because no. I'm going to distance myself from that comment. It's because half of them deactivated their account. So what do the medical students do these days? Do they deactivate their account? They change their name. So they become unsearchable. So you change your name to something witty or clever, whatever you think, and then your friends know to find you, and the people you're already friends with can find you because you're already linked through their page. But anyone who searches you, at least through a peripheral search, will not see you. So if you search Luke Newton, you will no longer find Luke Newton on the Facebook page. You find something else. And when I talk to medical students, I actually tell them it's okay to change your name on Facebook while you do it, because it's such a high stakes time. And I don't say do it because you're planning to be unprofessional. I say do it because you don't have control of what any of your friends are going to post on your wall. And if people see dialogue that's unprofessional by some of your friends, you can't control that. So at that high stakes moment, I say, you know what, don't do it because you're going to be unprofessional, but I'd say change your name because it does give them the opportunity to look. There's a lot of talk these days about whether we should, well, a lot of people look. In the business world, they look all the time. I think most of us don't have the resources to go ahead and, how many applications are y'all getting for your program this year? 900. You can't do 900. That's a whole person for a full-time job looking at 900 Facebook pages. But I gave this talk for a group of pediatricians, and the people from the Child Abuse Fellowship. They interviewed 5 a year for their one spot, and I said, why not look? It's just 5 people, and you're going to have to live with them for the next 2 years. Why not look it up when it's only 5 people? And so there is a lot of people looking. Things that are happening: updating status while in the OR, writing about difficult patients, writing about work, pictures of substance abuse, provocative pictures, patients friending physicians, and communications with other hospital employees through Facebook. Here's one I want to go to here. This is a parody. Skip this ad.
OB-GYN style. Gynae style. I'm I'm an obstetrician catching babies, it's my calling. When I'm on the BU, fetal tracing's never falling. I got the smooth moves, mom and dad be recalling. The baby ain't the only one who's ballin'. Preeclampsia, next door's fully screaming out for anesthesia. In the other room there's a shoulder dystocia. Don't forget the PPH with blood dyscrasia. This night is crazy, meconium, amniotic shower, that's OP, that's OP. Covered in 5 bodily fluids, that's OP, that's OP. No matter what, we will deliver your baby. OB-GYN style. Gynae style.
So, it seems funny, but I hear from my colleagues that you guys have a fun roast at the end of the year. I hear that we do some things in medicine that looks at some of the challenges that we have. And that's what this video was. This was the end of year video of a Canadian residency program in Toronto. And what's very funny about this one is that they went to their hospital and they said, hey, what do you think about this? And Canadians are way more laid back than we are. And they were like, oh, that's great. Let's post it on our hospital website. And so they got this, the hospital posted it on their hospital website because they're like, it's fun, it's all in good fun, eh? Like, you know, Canadians are just a little bit different in how they look at things. And so about 1 million hits later, the anti-hysterectomy women, and there's a very small subset of women who are very, very strongly opposed to hysterectomy, got a hold of this video and talked about how it objectified a very challenging time in their lives. And so they got so much pushback from a small minority of people that they had to pull it. Now, you can still find it because people keep reposting it. And so it's been viewed about 2 million times, which proves that it's hard to hide things once they come out. So why is it different? Why was it okay for them to make this video and show it at their roast and maybe not right on Facebook? The audience, right? Is there something, and this goes way back to House of God. If you read the book House of God, as a physician, it means a whole lot more to you because there's so much of it that is real, and you understand what's going on there. But someone who reads that book from outside doesn't quite get it. Someone who watches that video who's a gynecologist, I don't think it's objectifying women. It's just kind of making fun of our funny experiences that we have, right? There's something odd about what we do sometimes, especially a gynecologist. And so that's understood in the audience. But my parents weren't allowed to come to my roast in residency. The reason is because they didn't understand the context. They didn't understand what was going on there. And that's what happens when we post it. And this is a good example of someone who did get in trouble. This one happened just east of here at a place, at a medical school there. And they, in 2009, showed a Halloween video, and they did a parody of a Beyonce song called All the Bentob Patients. And here's the lyrics. In Espanol, tiene dolor, hope you understand what I say, but when you flipped, my left hand slipped. You can't get mad at me. If you don't like it, you should have got insurance. You crashed your car while under the influence. Mom's a teen, third kid at 18, baby slipped, you can't get mad at me. Your health care is provided by medical students. It's okay if you ain't got insurance. Across the street, you don't stand a chance. Baylor's got some damn good medical students. Because Fox, the local Fox channel, got a hold of it, and they showed it on the news because someone posted the video of it on Facebook. And so then Fox News found it, not the big Fox News, the local Fox News, and they showed it, and it became actually a very challenging situation for all of the people at Baylor, and they had to come out and make all of these comments. What I love about this is not only are there some very racially challenged comments in here, what's going on right here? So people, Yeah, so what we're doing is we're not only just making fun of like patients, now we're going ahead and taking a little stab at the people across the street. So I don't know, maybe it was like something that the Baylor person had to call the UT person and ask what they think. This here is this is the picture. Most of the stuff I have here is restaged. This one, I got permission to use real from the hospital where it came from. This one is the one that got me $20,000 because this picture is so awesome and so horrible all at the same time. So what's wrong with this? Is it a HIPAA violation? Is it? You'd have to work pretty hard to make that a HIPAA violation. I don't think it is. Although, does anyone recognize it? Does anyone know where that is? It's not here. It is. What's that? No, it's Parkland. It's Parkland. It's actually L&D on Parkland. And enough people, so I give this talk to enough OBGYNs. I was giving it to the ABOG, the American Board of Obstetricians, and one of the old chairman of the board, he was like, that looks like home to me. And he recognized it immediately. So it's not as anonymous as we like to think. But what's wrong with this picture? If it's not a HIPAA violation, why is it questionable whether this person should have done it? Yeah.
What's the point of it? I mean, someone was bleeding, so this picture is taken at their expense, but I don't get what person taking the picture or point they were trying to prove. That they're cool, they got to deal with this.
There is a wet floor sign where there's one of
And so it appears that they're more busy taking the picture than maybe cleaning up the wet floor. Uh-huh.
I think that the graphical content of the image is the problem. I mean, you're showing a picture of blood, some people might find offensive.
Or not just offensive, but calloused. Right. It takes away the humanity of it. And I think, honestly, what I think that this person was probably expressing when they said that was probably not, I'm cool, but probably saying maybe this is a typical reflection of how my night has gone for 5 straight nights. And this is just a perfect picture of how my life is right now. It's just blood everywhere, and here it goes again. And this is just sort of a perfect picture of what I'm having to deal with every night. And I honestly think that's what this person was intending to express. It's just like typical night for what the last 2 weeks has been. And so it's... Say again? Any other problems with this? Yeah.
Because we understand it, but
yeah.
non-physician neighbors may not.
Yeah. So let's do this. How many people here have 200 friends on Facebook? Okay. So how many of you still have 500 friends on Facebook? Usually in this audience, we have a couple 500s. Now, what's interesting, now it's unfortunate that the friends is the word that's used, because for some of you high-volume frienders, that's what I'll call you, are they really your friends? No. What are you using Facebook for at that point? Why do you have 500 friends? It's contacts, right? It's a way to find people when you want to find them. And so what it is for them, for most high-volume frienders, there are some people who are just pathologically think they have 1,000 friends when they don't. I'll explain that to you guys later. But they're using it as a Rolodex, right? Y'all will know what Rolodex is over here. So a Rolodex, that's something we understand. So they're using it a way to find people. But, Facebook chose to call it friends, so which implies to some people, oh, they really think those people are their friends. Unfortunately, if you don't have your privacy settings as such, all 800 people that are your friends get to see this post, whether they understand the context of it or not. This one I restaged, but it was really sent to me. What's wrong with this?
The patient is in clear view.
We have a clear view. We have at least a jaw, and we have a tattoo, right? People have been fired for that down in the trauma bay. not our trauma bay that I know of, but in general, trauma bays, right? That people posted pictures of tattoos. And so that was enough to identify the patient. What about this? Yeah. Most of us have done our first appendectomy or first major procedure. Did you really do it on your own? You did it, but there was someone scrubbed in. This implies, without the context, that interns are like running everything and have no supervision. And because you guys understand that if someone says, about to do my first appendectomy, they're not really alone, right? There's someone there, either an upper level or a faculty, making sure that they don't mess up. But from all this looks to them is, if you're on the outside, they're just, the interns are doing their first appendectomies on anyone. That's how it works. And so this one here, what's wrong with this?
Same concept as that part of the picture.
Yeah. So I kind of regret how we restaged this, because the way it was this picture was restaged, and there was too many identifiers that we could actually see on there. So we actually got new blood bags that we could do it. But the way the original picture that was sent to me is that they were lined up on the floor just in perfect lines, about 30 of them. And what was going on was it was a massive transfusion protocol, and I think that the blood bank had lined them up to keep count. And so someone had taken a picture of sort of how odd that is, that we are sitting there in this big emergency and you just see blood all over the floor. And I think in the moment it was another thing of just sort of saying, this is how odd my night is going, is that we understand that 30 bags on the floor equals a bad night in the operating room. This one, unfortunately, without the context, doesn't lead to that. All right, so then let's look at this. What about happy pictures? What about things that don't talk about patients? What about ones that just sort of celebrate what we do? So is there something challenging about this?
There's a patient on the table.
Yeah?
I mean, if the patient was maybe out of there and it was just in an OR room and there was no patient in there, maybe, but that they're all giving thumbs up when a patient's on the table is inappropriate.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm friends with my scrub techs. I'm friends with my residents. I mean, I'm friendly with them. We talk. We do enjoy each other's company, and we should. But the patient's laying there. I think we did a decent job of staging it where the patient was appearing open, right? And so it appears like we are wasting time when something else should be going on, and it acts like we're always goofing off in the OR, right? That we're always having a good time. I have pictures. I have those little laparoscopy pictures, the selfies with the laparoscopy scope of me and my chiefs on their last surgery with me, and I have them in my office, posted on a little bulletin board, which is similar to this. So do y'all know what a selfie is? And last year, it's hard to ignore what a selfie is. But you turn the laparoscope around in this case, and you take a picture of you and your chief, and we print it out. And it's a memory of the people who have sort of gone through and trained with me. What's the difference between that and this?
That's posted, the other one is in your office.
Yeah, it's in my office. Nobody comes in my office except for my residents and maybe people interviewing or something. So it's the context. Once again, the audience is limited to say, we understand what's going on there. Is us just sort of, it's a memory of who's come through. This one, even though good-spirited, is challenging because of those things. What about this one? One of the people who worked on the project with me, actually, did this, and when it was pointed out to her, she had to take it down. So what do you think is really going on in this picture? So we've been here. Most of us have been here. What is this picture trying to communicate?
Working on a holiday.
Yeah, I'm working on a holiday. I'm making the best of it, right? Are they really drinking champagne? No. They're drinking sparkling grape juice, apple juice or grape juice or something like that. The problem is, as someone pointed out to them, it looks like they're drinking on call. And everyone in this room knows that they're not drinking on call. We know that they're trying to communicate, our life stinks and we're making the best of it, right? And so it's the loss of the context that happens when it's put way out there, that even a fairly benign idea, that you could probably take this picture and post it in your doctor's lounge and probably get away with it and not be unprofessional, is when you lose context of it, it's a little bit challenging. And then, of course, there's the fairly demeaning comments about the crazies coming into the ER. I like this one, especially my audience today. This is the same person who posted the first two. This person's quite prolific. So here, obviously, we are starting an interdepartmental war, right? As at least we're like not building to the collegiality of this person's not here, by the way, and this person actually is somewhere on the East Coast. And so here the comments start to build up a thing that you don't control. This comment was unprofessional for several reasons, and then the comments go on, and there's 9 comments on this that people just start to like, hey, let's make fun of whoever we feel like making fun of today. So the comments can often get us in trouble. Let's talk about this. When we use Facebook, especially in the younger generation, it's a way of expressing ourselves. It is a completely acceptable way that we dialogue with people. Are we supposed to, when we have medical complications or frustrations about patients, and when you are operating on a patient who's 400 pounds and they come back with a wound infection and you know it's just because you care more about their weight than they care about their weight, sometimes those things are frustrating, and that's okay. When a patient comes in and her baby's dead because she'd used crack last night, that's frustrating to me, and that makes me angry. Are we supposed to keep that to ourselves? What are we supposed to do? Yeah. Yeah, I think it's completely acceptable for us to talk about some of the frustrations that we encounter in medicine, or some of the complications that we encounter, to try to work them through in our mind. And the same way, it's perfectly good to celebrate some of I'm doing my first appendectomy today. That is really good. I'm glad you're excited about it.
By the same token, if you post that, you lose control of that 9 or 20 line stream of comments.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It reflects back on you.
Right. And there's been times where this isn't in medicine, but there was an employee of the Judson School District who posted something about their school, who was an employee there, and about their school board, and the comments moved. They started the conversation. It wasn't necessarily an unprofessional post. Everyone started like piling on to the Judson School District board, and all the comments got very, very derogatory. And so the person was actually fired for starting the conversation. And so we lose control of what other people say. You know, I think that if you're posting about your work, it should be incredibly rare or vague, or both. I think that it's okay to talk. I mean, my residents this morning, I was talking to one of them. She just came off of ONC, and she said, you know what, I never posted on ONC because I wasn't at a happy place to be able to know that I was going to say anything. And then today I posted, I'm starting OB today. I'm so happy. Okay, I think that's fair. I think that's very broad, and that can talk about what she likes. I think you can be very broad in posting things, and that's okay. I'm going to... Let's look at this picture here. I find this picture incredibly interesting. So, what's wrong with this Facebook post? So what's wrong with this? Medical student at a party. Say again?
Looks just like a normal Friday night to me.
Well put, Dr. Rapp.
So what's wrong with it? Besides that they're drinking Busch Light. So the person looks lit, right? I mean, the person looks like pretty drunk out of their mind. I don't know if it's the makeup or that they're actually drunk, but But it's a pretty impressive picture. The first time I used it, actually it was the second time I gave this talk, I used this picture and I found it incredibly interesting that the conversation talked about what was going on at the party, and then someone raised their hand and said, is he mocking gay people? That's not why I chose the picture, but that's what that person showed, right? He is dressed like a fairy. And when I survey the audience, most of you guys didn't see that. A few people did see that. I didn't see it the first time I chose. I thought it was someone who was drunk out of their mind and at a Halloween party. And then someone else said, is it a homophobic picture? I don't know, but that person perceived it that way. Once again, going back to some people see something different than what you intended. Maybe this person intended it to be that, maybe they didn't. But when they posted it out, the audience got to decide what the intent was, right? When we put it out there, audience gets to decide the intent. This one, I gave a talk in New Orleans, actually. No, it was somewhere else. And someone came up to me after this talk. It was an older physician from another country, and he said in a very strong accent, I don't understand why this is a problem. And I said, have you ever been to New Orleans? And he's like, no. And I was like, do you know how you get beads in New Orleans? He's like, no. And I'm like, I explained to him, he's like, oh, you're right, that is very unprofessional. Right? He didn't understand it was unprofessional because his background and his exposure he didn't read into what it meant to everyone else to understand that this may imply the way she got her beads. Let's talk about Twitter real quick. These Twitter accounts are all by physicians who post very prolifically, and I think actually a lot of them do really good things in their posting. So what's wrong with the first one? First of all, they're posting as a doctor, okay? So that's the first thing to understand. Is this post professional or is it personal? It seems personal. I would guess that Oliver's her son. And so it's very personal, but coming from a person whose Twitter handle is at Dr. Such and Such. Here, these two are just kind of, this one I don't know. This may be a personal view or a professional view. I'm not entirely sure. But they are expressing it, once again, coming from a doctor standpoint. I think that there aren't a lot of things that are clear about what we should and shouldn't do, but one thing is that very clear in almost all recommendations is that we should maintain a separate personal and professional identity. These people tweet as doctors, and their opinions are coming often from a doctor perspective. These things don't appear to be doctor enough for them to be coming from their professional handle. They seem very personal. All right. Let's talk a little bit about texting. Who texts people their upper levels pictures of a wound? You don't have to raise your hand, because I know you guys do it. All right. Who texts things like this to your intern? Right. We do that. Are texts HIPAA compliant? Are they discoverable in a court of law? They are. Right? So just understand the things that you text to each other, you need to be very careful about. The residents will text me about patients. They know to be intentionally cryptic. So to just basically say, patient we operated on yesterday, I'm ready to go home. Call me for more information. Some very cryptic. So I encourage you, if you're going to text information, be cryptic, but just understand that cryptic also leads to ambiguity. Right? So that's the balance we have here. We're texting people, and let's all acknowledge also those typed texts that you get on your pagers aren't HIPAA compliant either, and that's the other big secret in medicine is that those text pages that we've been getting for 20 years also break the rules. But so I'm not telling you not to do it. I'm telling you there's dangers to doing it, and so just be aware of you doing it. I did this one here. This one here, a physician texted me, and she was super worried about her pap smear. And I was about to get on a plane, and I knew she was worried, and the nurse had called me with the results. And so I responded to her. So what's wrong with this?
Somebody else can have read that message, not necessarily the patient.
Yeah, she puts it down, and for that foggy part of gynecology that you guys are trying to forget, what does this mean? If someone has a pap smear 6 months later, what does that mean? Yeah, she has recently had an abnormal pap smear of some type. So if you have enough knowledge, this isn't just, hey, your labs are normal. By there, I put enough information in there where actually someone could look and be like, oh, she left her phone here, and it looks like she's had some recent abnormal pap smears. Who here has their iPhone linked to their iPad and gets texts on both through their iMessage? Yeah. So who here doesn't know you could do that, right? So my wife does it because I know when she's out, her iPad's sitting on the desk there and her iPad's blowing up and it's going off and I know that she's texting like crazy. How do you know I'm not looking, right? So you think it's being sent to one person, it could be being sent to multiple things. So just consider technology will change. Consider the principles, I think, is the important thing. Our smartphones, if you look at technical, the policy of most hospitals, including this one, is that you're not allowed to. So just be aware of that. Do not friend patients. Most of us have had a patient engage us through Facebook, and you redirect them to UH's site. If they want to have a Facebook contact, just say that, and say all the medical care will be managed through the traditional ways. And it's more complicated than this because my wife is friends with a couple of people who on Facebook who then became my patients. So they were my friends before they were my patients. Do I have to unfriend them? I don't know. The point is prudence, right? The point is saying that's not how we engage each other and that you probably shouldn't. And do you have to unfriend people who are pre-printed? The point is think about it. I love this. In 1999, Andy Dick said this on News Radio, the old show, but I found it incredibly predictive of how things are 14 years later. So what are we supposed to do when people are unprofessional on Facebook or Twitter? What should we do? What are our options?
Approach that person, talk to them.
Yeah. How often does that happen? That's the ideal world. What happens in the less ideal world, there's an anonymous way that you can report that person, and then they go to you. And the people from the hospital go to you and say, hey, such and such is doing some kind of weird things on Facebook, and you need to address it, right? So instead of doing what we should do and just say, hey, dude, a little more, be careful there. Because most of the posts are not overtly HIPAA violation or anything like that. It's just someone's just ranting, and they're professional people who just had a moment of unprofessional posting. So approach them is what we're supposed to do. I encourage you to do it. Most of us don't do it, but I do think that is actually a very good way to encourage professionalism. General guidelines, let's look at this one. This is what AMA says. Be cognizant of privacy and confidentiality. Use your privacy settings. Maintain appropriate boundaries. Alert colleagues of their unprofessional behavior. Report unprofessional behavior that's not corrected. You shouldn't view your online activity as private. And separate your professional and your personal content. And so the way that we express ourselves will change. Facebook will become like MySpace. There will be something else that comes along. The principle has to remain the same, that you need to think about what we do, and that there is a higher, unfortunately or fortunately, we are held to a higher standard. And I think that there's certain things that our patients trust us with. So it's not just like you are the checkout person at HEB and can post whatever you think. There is a higher standard that people expect from us. So make sure you post professionally. So that's what I got. Thanks for having me.
Any questions for Dr. Newton?
How did this become an area of interest to you?
So basically it got to something where I kept, I would get the emails from Dr. Zanakis or they're saying, hey, we need to address this with such and such person. And I thought that one solution that some people had that I didn't entirely agree with was that one solution is don't ever post. You're not allowed to post. And I think that there is some wisdom to that, but I don't think it's practical, and I don't think that engages how the younger generation has grown up interacting. And so I think that what's more important is to address it from a standpoint of you're going to post, just look at situations and how people view those things and understand how those can be taken out of context. So it became an interest because I saw enough people get in trouble for it, and trying to understand that we need to engage people in a more, understand the spectrums of what we do and how they could be misinterpreted in that way. So that's how.
And as a follow-on to that, because I've seen a couple of presentations about utilizing social media at the American College of Surgeons, is there any way to use social media to your benefit?
Absolutely. So I think that, so yes, I would say on the standpoint of a, in training medical students and residents, I would say there are very few opportunities for you to use those because the patients are kind of borrowed patients. So I would say from a standpoint of if you want to be an advocate for something, if you want to be doing those things and expressing yourself, I'm not sure that residency or medical school is the right time to do it because, so then stepping out into our own jobs, I mean, UH has a big one, has over 5,000 people following it. You can disseminate a very good public message for your practice. Flu vaccines are in. If you're pregnant, get your flu shot. That's perfect. That is how our patients are being reminded of things, and it's a way to remind them of those things. The mammogram mobile is out at the Southeast Clinic. Go get a mammogram. Yes. And so there's a lot of effective ways to use it in individual practices. I think just understanding that it's not HIPAA compliant and that's not how you should be having patient conversations with them.
Dr. Dan?
So great talk, Luke. Thank you very much. It's made me actually be somewhat introspective. I want to ask your opinion. I spent the weekend in Napa, Sonoma Valley with some friends, visiting some vineyards and tasting some wine. And as we were at the airport, we had a glass of wine. And one of the other couple posted a picture of us holding a glass of wine on Facebook, on her Facebook page. It was our first class. We were not intoxicated. We were not doing stupid, crazy stuff. But is that unprofessional on my behalf?
I never take a picture with a glass of wine in my hand because of that picture. It's not that I think it's wrong. I don't think you have to ask that person to take the picture down unless you're strongly opposed to it. It's because I don't want to lose control of the conversation. And as soon as it's posted, anyone else can, I mean, maybe were you dressed like a fairy?
No, not just like
I can, so it's that I choose in that way not to lose control of the conversation. And so if we live that way entirely, I think we would live our entire life in fear because anything could be taken out of context if you work hard enough. I choose not to let alcohol be taken out of context for me. And so whenever I have a picture, I get rid of that. And this, as sort of an aside, what's interesting, I gave this talk at a big nursing conference, and one conversation that emerged was from the nurses, is that they were annoyed at all of their doctors who wouldn't buy lunch on call, but were posting these fancy pictures of their Hawaii vacations and Europe vacations, and they found that contradictory, and that's what they chose to walk away. And I was like, okay, I mean, I'm not saying it's not a legitimate thing. I'm just saying that's their perception, and that's how they filled in the blanks. That hey, they're cheap. They won't buy us ever sandwiches on call, but they are going to Hawaii every 3 months. And so that I was like, I'd never thought of that, but that's how they're interpreting certain pictures. So just understand that you lose control of the conversation.
Probably it's different for physicians because we're a physician 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365. The guy that works at the Toyota plant, it would be objectionable if he had a glass in his wine while he's putting your Tundra together. But after work, probably not a problem.
Right.
Same thing for pilots where all that drinking problem has been.
Yeah, and it's the same reason because of the loss of control of the conversation. When I go out with residents after a call or after something, I will buy drinks, but I will never buy drinks for anyone in scrubs. That's my rule across the board. You're not allowed to have a pager on. You have to leave your pager in your car, and you can't be in scrubs because I don't know what other people are thinking. That's just my personal rule. I'm not saying everyone should have that rule. It's because I'm aware of other people trying to judge why we're in scrubs and that we may be on call. Yes.
What is your approach to the students' odd rounds on their phones? I try to be sensitive to this issue. I have young kids, arranging the plumber. I realize all that is going on, but when you're dedicating an hour and a half to rounding in the ICU and you feel like you're teaching to people who are busier on their phone, you start to wonder where to draw that line.
So it's hard. So I think that first we have to go and look at ourselves. Because unfortunately or fortunately, I at times am distracted by my phone. And I like to think that I'm a big enough deal that it's okay for me to take a break from rounds to answer my email because it's clearly a big deal when I'm answering my emails. And so I think the first thing I have to ask myself is how professional am I, and am I modeling something professional? Because I do see it among ourselves and myself. So I know, I'm making more of a global statement. So the first thing is, are we holding them to a standard at which we don't hold ourselves? The second thing is I do the orientation for the students on this. I tell them that if they have to answer their phone during clinic or during rounds, they should say, this is an important text. Can I answer it? And every one of you guys are going to say yes, because we understand that your wife's locked their keys in their car and they need to deal with, things like that. So I ask them to validate when they do have to check so that they know that when you're doing something, or to say, hey, I have to respond to this email. Is it okay if I respond? I know they're not all doing it. That's what they're supposed to be doing. That's what I try to remind them to do. That there are times when you get a text and you glance at your text and you're like, okay, and you put it away because it's not important. And then just say, I just got a text from my wife. She locked her keys in her car. Can I answer this? And all of you guys are going to say yes to that. And so that's what I encourage them to do. I don't think that's the main problem. I think that mostly they're just sort of checking their Facebook stats. That's a professionalism issue. Kind of like distracted drivers, distracted doctors.
So us venting is nothing new. It's just that we didn't put it where a million people could look at it before.
Yeah. We were better at hiding the context and hiding that it happened and disseminate it so that...
Do you think the TV medical shows lulled us into a false sense of security and got us into this? Because they do things like that. They make fun of the things that we've all seen and have all done, or, the pictures of the blood bags on the floor on a bad day.
Are you talking about Ben Casey, doctor?
No, I never saw that. I wasn't born then, Dr. Ramos. I'm talking about Scrubs.
Yeah, I find Scrubs to be one of the more real shows that deals with some of the real challenges and emotions that we have in a very humorous way. But I do think that it does make it very casual. And I think that it's a different generation, and we don't keep our skeletons in our closet as much as maybe prior generations, right? This is the Kardashians' generation, right? The Kardashians has not stayed on reality shows by hiding their skeletons. Everything is out there, and that's what makes it an engaging show that's been around for so long. And so this generation of students, and for the sake of trying to make myself feel young, I'll include myself. Us and the prior generation and the younger generations, we are a little bit more comfortable with just putting it out there. And instead of hiding some of our problems, just being a little more brash about it. And I think that comes from what we have perceived on television, on a show like that, or reality shows. Because we're about 15 years into the reality show sort of generation where everything is just out there. And so we kind of are okay with expressing some things in a very brash way.
All right.
Thank you guys for having me.